Okay, everybody. Happy 2021. Yeah. So, hello. I want to start off first by saying I'm going to do this completely different than I usually do my talks. Having a loaded third house, I tend to just put everything on 3x5 cards as little keywords, and then I just go from there. And I'm up and walking around and stuff. And this time I'm not going to get out of my chair. Okay. And this time I actually wrote most of it out so I don't get people confused. And so with that in mind, if you have questions, please hold them till the end, because chances are I will have addressed some of those questions before we get to the end. And then after we're all done and I sign out, so to speak, then we'll take questions and we can turn on the chat and take questions from people online and so on. So
chat's on, you know.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll answer their questions at the end of that. So 2021, the year I'm calling the spark heard round the world. Okay. So let me tell you why. So Uranus is the key planet in 2021. You see, Jupiter's a 12-year cycle and Saturn's a 30-year cycle, and both are now firmly in Aquarius, okay, after having made a splashy entrance into Aquarius on the winter solstice in 2020. And Uranus is the ruler of the sign of Aquarius. He rules the Aquarian roost, you might say. So, and Jupiter and Saturn have come to visit him in Aquarius. Think of it as Uranus playing host to Jupiter and Saturn at Uranus's home, okay? Therefore, the interaction of Jupiter and Saturn, how they act when they're in Uranus's home, will give us some major clues on how that visit, on how 2021 is going to unfold, right? And I have to tell you, the way the three planets interact in 2021 makes me think of an Agatha Christie novel, you know, where the evening starts off with great expectations, right? And descends into mayhem and murder, you know, and only redeemed by the dogged persistence of the intrepid detective and so on. But this is 2021, okay? The planet Uranus gets hammered in 2021 by Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So, you know, Jupiter and Saturn are coming into Uranus's home and they're trashing the place, is really what's happening. So, so party gets off to a real rough start early in 2021 too. Mars pisses off Uranus right away, right in the middle of the month. And Mars is conjunct Uranus in Taurus, okay? And Jupiter's right there squaring Uranus, and that's like rubbing it in. Go ahead, go for it. Come on, go for it. You know. The big deeds of the year are done early in 2021, most of them in January and February, all right? So then Saturn makes 3 squares to Uranus through the rest of the year, okay? And just drags the consequences out from January and February throughout the year. And it's like, okay, was it the butler with the candlestick? Was it, you know, Mr. Mustard in the library? And what should be the consequences of our past deeds? That's the question in 2021. That has a lot, because all of the squares that are happening are third quarter squares. They're not opening squares, they're third quarter squares. And there's a big difference, and I'll explain that a little later, but it has more to do with the consequences that have already come and now what we're going to do about it. How are we going to move into the next cycle? Okay, so, and the question, you know, shouldn't we just all get along, right, and move on? Why dwell in the past? That was so Capricorn, right? We're in the age of Aquarius now, right? Individual actions are so passé. It's the collective that we care about now, right? It's not the journey, it's the goal that counts. Okay, of course, I'm being facetious, all right? But that's a lot of the difference between Capricorn and Aquarius. Now, even though Uranus is presently the host and ruler of Aquarius, one must remember he inherited the position directly from Saturn in the 1700s when Uranus was discovered. Prior to the 1700s, Saturn ruled Aquarius for thousands of years. It was the last planet that we could see in the solar system. Okay. And each of the planets ruled two different signs. Saturn ruled Capricorn and Aquarius. Right? Most astrologers would say that Saturn in Aquarius stands toe-to-toe with Uranus in 2021, since Saturn is the customary ruler of Aquarius, giving form to the formless, dialing in the right frequencies, and so on. Saturn in Aquarius is where the sky and all its many energies, the frequencies, the radiations, and so on, are most able to influence matter. Okay. Saturn in Aquarius is where the scientist and the idealist both give expression to some pretty great ideas. Actually, Saturn in Aquarius is the magician, having come home to rest in Capricorn for the last few years, and now having entered Aquarius, sets out on new endeavors and magical quests of knowledge and discovery. So this is a good time to be in the scientific arts. And when I say scientific arts, I also mean astrology, metaphysical research, not just the tangible sciences, okay? Scientific arts, where you have to learn the mechanics, then you learn the musical delivery, okay? You have to learn the details, then you learn the intuitive part, where you pull it all together, okay? So many new governmental programs will be given funding in 2021. And many of these programs will be in areas of material or physical manipulation through the application of sound and waveform technology. That's Aquarius, the double lines, its frequency, its harmony, its amplitude, its dissonance, it's all of those. All right, we're going to be hearing quite a bit about it in the medical fields too, especially when it comes to, they're already using sound for breaking up gallbladder stones and things like that. But once they start to dial in these frequencies over the next few years, you're going to hear of some major innovations in the medical field, where they're able to just use pulses and waves and various frequencies and harmonics and so on, and angling them from different parts of the body and so on. And so, okay. Actually, let me take that back. After we get to the mid-2020s, then we're going to hear about all the experiments and the discoveries that are going on in 21 and 2022. Right? During 21 and 2022, this stuff is going to be repressed in the media, so to speak, but it will be happening. All right. And then after 2022 into 23 and 24 and 25, the grand opening that I'll talk about, all right, that's when information is going to become public knowledge. So with Uranus being a key player in 2021, this automatically gives the year an underlying flair for excitement and the unexpected. Expectations are high in 2021, especially after 2020, okay? Maybe too high, all right? It's going to take a lot of work and change in 2021 to get to where we want to be. This is something I'm always running into with astrology. People, oh, my Saturn return hit. What's happening? How come nothing's happening? Well, it's going to take 2 years for that Saturn return to start over again and start a new cycle. People forget that these kind of things take time. Even the entrance into the Aquarian age is a 40, 50, 60-year transition zone, okay? And we're maybe halfway, maybe about 3/4 of the way through. I honestly believe that by the time we get to the 2026, people will be saying, yep, this is it. There's no doubt, okay? So there's going to be massive resistance to change in 2021. Over-the-top reactions to the changes that do happen too, right? Rebellions, the whole bit, complaints, you name it, right? You see, Uranus is about non-conformity, individuality, all right? Radical actions and life-changing epiphanies. It's the sudden spark of awareness, the sudden lightning flash of understanding, and the sudden agonies of defeat, right? What I like to call the Humpty Dumpty effect. Bam, in an instant, you're different and cannot be put back together again. Only in my version, the version with Uranus running the show this year, Humpty Dumpty cracks into a million pieces, and then a new chick comes out. And so there's a whole new birth. And of course, the chick can't go backwards, but there's the potential of a whole new birth, the potential that as that chick grows, as Saturn moves through Aquarius, okay, as Pluto gets through Capricorn to Aquarius in late 24 and into 2025, that's when we get what I call the Aquarian infancy. So and I'm going to talk about that too as we get here. You don't get to go backwards with Uranus, even in the face of everyone in 2021 telling you to do so. We hear all this stuff about going back to, or the new normal this, or let's get back to sanity. It doesn't happen. It's not. It's okay. Not with Uranus squares all year. Uranus gets hammered, and Uranus is going to say, well, you know, you're going to get my full brunt of individuality, explosions, sudden excitement, sudden revolutions, all of it, right? One thing you can say for sure about Uranus, it's never boring. The power of Uranus is never boring. It's always something unexpected. And if it's expected, it's always something over the top, more than you expect. Right? How Uranus is treated by the other planets in our solar system in 2021 will tell us a lot about how the year will unfold. In January, Mars makes this conjunction to Uranus, as I said, as Jupiter makes a square to Uranus, which tells me that 2021 comes in with a bang, big time, okay? Even this is the spark that I referred to in the title, the spark heard round the world, okay? 2020, I had called the year of the rototiller, and that was way back in 2019, and it definitely, you know, we buried a lot of things in the backyard in 2020. So to speak. So hopefully that's compost and it'll be the growing medium for 2021. After 2021 makes its grand entrance on the cosmic stage with all these events in January, the big events for the rest of 2021 are another 3 squares from Saturn to Uranus spread throughout the rest of the year, as I've mentioned. This tells me that the fallout from January will drag on consistently and continually through 2021. It'll be constant reactions and constant reaffirmations, constant revolution, constant everything from January and February through all the way into literally April of 2022, okay? Mars, having been the major triggering mechanism for events in 2020, has one last blast for us in 2021, going out in a blaze of glory as it reaches the final degrees of Aries in the first week of January. First 6 days, Mars is in Aries. This is Congress going back into being. This is the events, the 2 senators in Georgia. This is the Republicans who want to take down the Constitution, you name it. There's going to be some really interesting things now over the next, just this week coming up now even. But it builds and builds and peaks the few days just before Inauguration Day. The Mars-Uranus conjunction is on Inauguration Day, okay? That's some tightly wound Mars energy. And a lot of folks are just going to pop, you know. So situational awareness is critical in January. And I want to repeat that. Situational awareness. Pay attention to where you are. Pay attention to where other people are in their cars, driving past you, walking down the streets or so on. Because with Uranus, it's something that comes out of the blue. You don't expect it. Cars coming past you, you don't expect it, but it blows a tire and boom, in front of you. That's a Uranian kind of thing. And Mars and Uranus together in an Earth sign, we're going to have some interesting weather in January. As a final climax to the whole Mars and Aries thing in 2020, there's going to be some very interesting, although expectedly some very hyper radical type events leading up to Inauguration Day this year. please pay attention to your personal surroundings in January. I'm talking much more than our COVID-induced 6 feet of separation, okay? January's events have much more to do with quickly moving objects that can move across a 6-foot social distance in an instant, okay? All right, we're talking, trains, planes, and automobiles and things like that. Things that explode from across the room, Whether we have nice weather or not, it's not the time to be out, trying to fix the propane tank, okay? Or even barbecuing with an old propane tank or something. That it's just too tenuous. Mars conjuncts Uranus every 3 years or so, 2.5 or so. But Mars conjunct Uranus in Taurus really is very physical. We're talking earth movements, earth shakes, sudden sinkholes. We got these volcanoes already that are starting to go off here and there again. Okay, that's going to continue into January. Watch where you step in January. Okay. The term landmines can mean many things in January, okay? That makes me think of the old, the Halloween trick that you did, where you put dog poop in a thing. Right? So Mars will be conjunct Uranus exactly on January 20th in Taurus and Earth sign, signifying many explosive and physically disruptive events, starting around the 6th of January when Mars enters Taurus, and again, peaking during the few days prior to Inauguration Day. Weather events will be especially explosive and disruptive in January. And in this case, most notably in the eastern portions of Canada, US, South America, okay? The part of the world that's ruled by Taurus is pretty much east of the Mississippi, or a line drawn from Chicago down through New Orleans, and anything east of that is Taurus. This is the Taurus landmass. A lot of things are going to rattle, shake, and get broken in January. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that our country itself will not be one of these things. Although given, again, the hyperactivity present on Inauguration Day, and then there's a similar performance, okay, coming up around Independence Day, that's when Mars squares Uranus, makes the opening square. So we get the conjunction on Inauguration Day and the opening square on our birthday. That's just too coincidental for me to say, something isn't going to get really tenuous when it comes to our government. So, matter of fact, I wrote down, I do think that a second American Revolution is about to spark in 2021. And it's going to spread like wildfire around the planet, because it's not just going to be us. All right. This is what I mean about the spark in 2021 being heard around the world, especially with the US Pluto return coming up on us and America's karma coming home to roost, all right? Which can be a good thing, all right, if the country is able to transcend its colonial and capitalist past. And I know that sounds a little socialist, but think about what the US has been about. Right? The karmic path is not an easy path if one chooses to walk it. A caterpillar voluntarily withdraws from the world and dies to one level, that it might have a chance at becoming the chrysalis, and the chrysalis then a chance of becoming the butterfly. All right? The phoenix must face the fire if it's to transcend its past. America the beautiful, if we play this right, could become America the butterfly, right? A butterfly rising from the ashes of her past. So we're guided to this end in the early months of 2021 by a series of 3 conjunctions of Mercury to Jupiter, all in the sign of Aquarius, okay? Which bodes well for social awareness and taking the moral high ground, but not for restraint. Okay, it's a little bit of the over-the-top aspect. Justice is served up on a big plate of indignation, is how I call it, for January of 2021. All right? Calls for retribution, redistribution. All right, they're going to be heard far and wide. All right, There's a fine line between reformation and revolution in January and February. One causes a lot less pain and death than the other. In early 2021, it's going to be all too easy, all right, to cross that line, intentionally or unintentionally. There's going to be a lot of good intentions that turn to monsters in early 2021. The monsters that we ultimately decide to slay in 2021 will not have the opportunity to ravage our lands, all right? Common sense. But the monsters that we create and let live and develop in 2021 are going to lay waste all year long, okay, into 2022. So choose wisely in early 2021. Take care in what you support and feed with your actions. The world's on steroids early in 2021. And I myself would rather deal with, what's his name, Bruce Banner, than have to deal with the Incredible Hulk, okay? So in 2021, the eclipses, 2 solar and 2 lunars, occur mostly across the Gemini-Sag axis, continuing and building upon the similar Gemini-Sag axial eclipses of 2020. We have more of the same. In the early part of 2020, we had Cancer Capricorn, all right, but then it moved into Gemini Sag in 20, and now we're going to finish the Gemini Sages out in 2021. Right. So as more and more eclipses send more and more shock waves out from the Gemini Sag axis in 2021, more and more attention is going to be paid to what I call the education versus wisdom dichotomy. Okay, they're far from the same thing. Gemini, which is usually the education part, right, is more about what you learn. I mean, Gemini is more about the act of learning and the absorption of information. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I need more information. Right? Sagittarius is more about what you learn and why. You know, why is it worth learning this stuff? Gemini is more about quantity. Sag is more about quality. Okay, so with these eclipses going on, lunar and solars, okay, and Gemini Sag, we're going to hear information back and forth. All right, how did I put it? We will see this play out across many communities in 2021 as we are forced to deal with the failures of poor remote learning models, federally and state mandated educational parameters, right? Parental versus public responsibilities in their roles as educators, okay, of our children, who's supposed to be doing what. And there's going to be a quickening transformation of the value and definition of the term education. Right? Other areas that are going to continue to be transformed as the eclipses continue to occur across Gemini and Sag is going to be private versus public transportation issues and rights, free speech versus propaganda issues, right? And what I call the media versus Medea trend, okay? And when I say Medea, all right, I mean the more ancient goddess of prophecy, not the more recent patriarchally distorted version of a revengeful murderer, all right, or some Tyler Perry slapstick. All right? Medea was the goddess of prophecy, okay? And for many, many eons. The role of Mercury as the messenger of the gods and goddesses and as the ruler of the news and mass media today would do well to seek the protections of Medea, the goddess of prophecy. In prophecy, there's no deception, no distortions, no personal gain, only truth, naked, blunt, undeniable truth, okay? I dare say that standard of communicative excellence would be hard to find amongst those we term the media today, right? And as transiting Jupiter crosses back and forth into Pisces over this next year, the voices of reason will be fewer and far between. We'll see fewer instances of the media reporting on real events and more instances of the media spinning and reporting on events that they want to see happen. Another area stirred up by the Gemini-Sag eclipse axis are issues surrounding the concept of where basic education starts and stops. Who pays for it and how long? We're talking college, 2-year, 4-year, 7-year master program, what? Okay. And what do we get in return? Public service? Private service? Okay. Big issues coming up. And with all 3 Mercury retrogrades fully in air signs throughout 2021, all right, Mercury's going to spend over half a year in air signs, all right? So this gives the intellectual and erratic air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, a significant role to play in 2021. So there's going to be an inordinate amount of dialogue and attention paid to these Gemini-Sag issues. To the point, it's probably, of the 3 air signs, Aquarians get the biggest boosts in 2021. Then Geminis, then Librans, in that order. The fixed signs, Taurians, Leos, Scorpios, and Aquarians, are the signs that have the most work ahead of them in 2021. And actually the possibility for the best payouts too. The earth signs, the Taurians, Virgos, and Capricorns get to make the biggest physical changes in 2021. And the water signs, the Cancerians, Scorpios, and Pisceans, they get to really level up, especially when Jupiter makes a trial run into Pisces in June and July. Right? The cardinal signs, Arians, Cancerians, Librans, and Capricorns, and all the fire signs, the Arians again, Leos, and Sagittarians, both get to finally relax a bit in 2021. Right? After January, that is, okay? Not before January. Although also, we get 2 Leo moons this year, right? So we have a blue moon in Leo this year. And blue moons are not 2 blue moons in a calendar month. They're 2 full moons in the same sign, all right? And we get 2 Leo full moons this, July and August, all right? So those 2 full moons in fire signs are going to give the fire signs a chance for a pretty neat summer, okay? We're gonna have a nice, active, busy summer. The mutable signs in 2021, the Geminis, Virgos again, Sagittarians, and Pisceans, they're mostly going to be gearing up for 2022. That's when they really reach their peaks. Really. When it comes, really, when it comes to the planet Venus in 2021, her effects peak by early May. Right, she's the morning star in January and February. That's about it. Right? And then peaks in early May and then has little consequence until November. Right? Venus reaches her superior conjunction to the sun right after the spring equinox at 6 degrees of Aries, bringing to fruition those issues around love and possession that came to light during the Venus retrograde cycle in May and June of 2020. All right. The spring of 2021 will have a lot of spring in its step, all right? Young love that bloomed last spring is now going to get a chance to blossom. Issues around value and attraction that surfaced last spring will now get a good chance for completion and integration. Beauty and desire that was lost through last spring, all right, comes back into our lives early this spring. Venus, the goddess in all of us, comes home to Taurus, the sign of pleasure and sensual gratification in April of 2021, giving us a full moon in Taurus at the end of April. That's going to be what I call a party under the moonlight.
Like people I don't know.
That's going to be some witchy stuff, okay? Which, by the way, we're going to see a rather noticeable spike in births too the coming winter of 2021. Due to that full moon in Taurus, and due to Venus spending 4 months in Capricorn during the winter of 2021 into 2022, okay? Venus in Capricorn is like bringing love down into tangible form, okay, is the way I want to manifest that one, which has me a little bothered. Well, Venus, what has me a little bothered really about Venus this year, all right, is that in the last few days of the year, Venus makes 3 conjunctions to Pluto, actually 2. The third one will be in March of 2022, but there's 2 Venus conjunctions in Pluto in December as it's turning retrograde. In astrology, Venus and Pluto have a rather toxic relationship to each other. They bring out the shadow side of love, pain, possessiveness, domination, right? Read the myth about Pluto and Persephone, or Pluto and Proserpina in some cultures, okay? Not the best way to celebrate the holidays in 2021. But on the bright side, what doesn't kill you, right? Makes you better, makes you stronger. So that's 2020. I mean, that's December of 2021. December of 2021 is all about tempering, hardening your metal, M-E-T-T-L-E, not M-E-T-A-L-E. Metal, your metal. There are 3 major peaks of activity where we will see much forward movement in 2021, and 2 rather large dips where we'll see little movement at all. The first peak of activity in 2021 is from January straight through May, with a slight dip in early February, and then continuing upward on through May, okay? The second positive peak is early July through late September. And the third active peak of 2021 is mid-October to late November, which basically tells us that the 2 big dips or retractions in social activities in 2021 are found throughout all of June and on into early July, and then again throughout December and on into the first few months of 2022. Pay close attention to this cycle. We're up in January, March, April, May, June, July, August, late October, and all of November, which is quite a bit, actually. And we're down in February, June, early October, and all of December. So 2/3 of the year, we're up. 1/3 of the year, we're down. The up times are for activities and accomplishments. The down times are for rest, recuperation, and relaxation. All 3 Mercury retrogrades are in air signs this year. Retrograde in Aquarius in February, in Libra in June, and in Gemini in early October. All right? Air signs have a big impact on the movement of objects and information from one place or person to another. All right? That's that honeybee moving between the flowers. That's the post office getting the letter out. That's the Zoom meetings working. That's anything having to do with the actual verbal communication or the distribution of stuff, things to the 4 corners of the world. All right? So what that tells me is that the businesses that maintain and repair the equipment that help move these objects and information around the world are going to be extremely busy in 2021. Again, trains, planes, and automobiles, right? They're going to be needing plenty of repairs and extra maintenance in 2021. Networking and telecommunication companies will also be socked with more than their usual issues and repairs. If you work in any of these fields in 2021, you can expect to put in some overtime this year, right? Because these companies are likely not going to be ready for this stuff. And they'll likely mess with the company stock values too. So be careful with stock options. If you're in one of these companies and they're paying you with stock options, you might want to hold back on those for a few years. We will have many opportunities during the Mercury retrograde cycles this year to address crossed signals, miscommunications, bottlenecks, and falsehoods, and ultimately getting around to the truth. All right. 2021 is also going to be a year where everybody's got something to say or point out. That's Mercury retrograde in air signs. Mercury's going to spend over almost half the year in air signs. Okay, that I call that verbal diarrhea in its worst case sense. In 2021, it would be more to our advantage in the long run, mind you, to get out and do something about these things that irk you, not just complaining or bitching about them, okay? Actually do something, all right? And 2021's about the long haul. That's probably the two best words I can use for 2021. Plan accordingly, all right? Even the Venus retrograde this year is not until the last few days of the year. Retrograding in Capricorn, making those 3 conjunctions to Pluto. It's quite a way to finish up the year, really. It's on the more positive side of the Venus-Pluto conjunctions. It's about resurrecting those cherished things from the past that have slipped from our grasps over the years, and of which we now recognize have great value. We should have never let them go. And we want to bring them back into our lives. So should make some very interesting holiday gifts in December. Old pictures and antiques, they're going to be in high demand, okay? Especially items linked to deceased relatives and historical figures. I suspect Venus, Pluto, that combination, what has come before us, what has died, what has seeded before us is going to be very important. People are going to consider that valuable going into 2022. So regarding 2021, let me back up a bit and take the long view for a moment. Astrology is the study of cycles and how those cycles affect all life, physically, mentally, and metaphysically, okay? There's a very specific rhythm to any cycle. First birth, then growth, maturation, fruition, then comes the second half of the cycle. Dissipation and decay, dying and going to seed, all leading to death and rebirth. Always, that's a cycle. First half is opening, second half is closing, okay? The first half of any cycle, from the point of birth through to fruition, or to what's called the harvest phase or full moon phase, right, is called the opening phase or waxing phase, the first opening cycle. It's called waxing or opening, right? The second half of the cycle, from the fruition, from the harvest, down through the birth, through the death, through the decay, down through the turning to seed and the death and so on. These are called the closing phase or the closing half or the waning phase of the cycle, right? Astrologers call the specific part of the cycle that represents the actual point of rebirth into the next cycle. They call those conjunctions, okay? And it's this point where 2 planets come together, as close together in the sky as they can. It's where they marry. Conjunctions are about marrying 2 planets involved. It signifies a new birth and a new cycle. It's the best time out of the whole part of the cycle to best integrate and blend whatever the 2 planetary energies are involved in the conjunction. Amongst the outer planets from Jupiter to Pluto, there are studied by astrologers 10 major cycles with their corresponding phases, conjunctions, and aspects. These 10 cycles range from 13 years in length to about 500 years in length, right? And these cycles are extremely noticeable societal indicators showing us the timing and description of major trends in humanity and as they unfold around the earth. To put the 21st century in perspective, at the start of the 21st century, there were 7 opening phases in effect and 3 closing phases. Almost 3/4 of the phases at the start of 2000, right, into 2001 and 2. 3/4 of the time, it was about newness, birth, potential, all right? By the time we got to 2017, we had switched to 7 closing phases and only 3 opening phases. So by 2017, 3/4 of it was about turning things to seed, getting rid of the old, wrapping it up in a bow and giving it to the thrift store. Okay, that's a 40% shift in energy in 18 years. All right, from growth and abundance at the beginning of the century, all right, to retraction and dissolution. Then came 2020. Okay, in 2020, 3 of these major cycles turned from closing phases to opening phases. So by the end of 2020, we had 6 opening phases and 4 closing phases. That's a 1,000% increase, okay, in cosmic activity over 1 year. All right, on average, when averaged out over hundreds of years, we only get one of these major phase shifts and conjunctions once every other year, 1 every other year. We got 3 in 1 year, okay? And they were the Saturn-Pluto 36-year cycle, which started its closing phase in 2001 and came to a conjunction and a new birth in January of 2020. That was one of the shifts, right? Then we had the Jupiter-Pluto 13-year cycles, which had been in their closing phases since 2014 and came to a conjunction 3 times in 2020. The last one in November. So now we're definitely in the opening phase of the Jupiter-Plutos. And then finally, the pièce de résistance in 2020 was the Jupiter-Saturn 20-year cycle, which had been closing since early 2011 and came to a conjunction in December of 2020. Now, this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is rather unique too. It also turned out to be the start of a 200-year cycle, what's called the Great Mutation cycle, and a 2,000-year long cycle. Most will agree with me, some won't, okay? But as we move from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. Now that we've reached 2021, we have 6 opening phases and 4 closing phases. And by the time we get to February 2026, we're going to have 9 opening phases and just 1 closing phase. This is tremendous. This is phenomenal, okay? This is fabulous. I'm calling this the new roaring 20s, okay? And it portends a time of unbridled expansion, optimism, opportunity, and hope.
What was the date? February what?
By February of 2026.
Okay.
By 2027, one of them turns to so on. But the middle of the 2020s is the potential is off the charts. Matter of fact, the last time that we had 5 major conjunctions in any one year, like we did in 2020, was 1821, all right? And I went and I looked up, they discovered electromagnetism, they deciphered the Rosetta Stone, it was the beginning of the Monroe Doctrine, all these people, Pasteur, Pasteur, Mendel, Schliemann, Eddy, all these people were born, not in their peak. It's when things were born, okay? It's when the Rosetta Stone was deciphered. It's when we went, oh, electromagnetism. Wow, look what we've done with that since, okay? That's what 2020 is. In 2021, we start that optimistic, although rather irritating, movement toward the mid-20s. All these people and events of the early 1820s gave birth to new ideas and new methodologies that lasted for generations. Conjunctions, they give us clarity and focus and direction. And in 1821, the 5, all right, as I mentioned, they shaped society. They made major changes in society. Conjunctions in astrology show us that clarity of purpose and show us the direction these new cycles or births are going to take, especially the 3 that we had phase shift in 2020. And this is good news for 2021. For those births of 2020, those major phase shifts in society that took place in 2021, they're going to start to take root in 2021. Or that took place in 2020, they're going to start to take place in 21. All right. We have to watch the people that were born in 2020. For as they grow, they're going to be the ones with the new methodologies, the ideas and ideologies that will shape the next 2 centuries, the Jupiter Saturns in air. Okay, we must pay close attention to the genius that was born out of the hardships and happenstance of 2021. People rarely make changes when life is comfortable. Okay, if you know the Carlos Castaneda books, it's the petty tyrant syndrome. So, you know, the person who irritates you to no end, that gets you off the couch and out and moving, that's the person you should be thanking. Okay, we should be thanking 2020 for what it is doing to our society. Okay, and my apologies to people who lost relatives and friends in 2020. And in the long run, you're going to see that what happens because of that is a big deal. Okay. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction of early 2020 was in Capricorn, foreshadowing the death and dissolution of outmoded systems and structures. The rototilling and burying out in the backyard of those things that have outlived their usefulness. This is going to continue until Pluto leaves Capricorn and stays in Aquarius come 2025. Okay, so we're not done unloading all of this stuff. 2020 was the major unload. That was the cosmic cleaning out the closets and, you know, going through the garage. So. The 3 Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions of 2020 also were in Capricorn, foreshadowing what I call the birth of necessity. Okay? The determination to change the old system to something new or die trying. Right? This cycle is going to continue until July of 2026 is when it reaches its peak. Then there was the Jupiter-Saturn pivotal conjunction at the end of 2020, which occurred most noticeably in early Aquarius, 1 degree of Aquarius, actually a half a degree into the sign of Aquarius. And early degrees of any signs indicate a raw or undeveloped approach. The energy is often brash and lacking refinement. It's raw energy. Okay, with this in mind, we have a lot to learn these next few decades when it comes to understanding the intricacies and subtleties of Aquarius. Our first attempt out of the gate so far have kind of fallen short of the Aquarian ideal. Right? Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions usher in new business cycles. The one in December. Occurring now as they do in early Aquarius means they will be geared toward technology, crowdsourcing, integration, and harmonization. And these new cycles, these new attitudes and endeavors, they're all going to be raw, rough, and untested at first. And will take years before we get the right mix of societal and individual rights. It just takes a while. You know, once the Aquarian birth happens, I still think we're Aquarius crowning at the moment. It's not even fully born. But even once it happens, it takes years before the Aquarian infant, okay, is walking and talking. So add to this the fact that Jupiter and Saturn both will be squaring Uranus in 2021. And I can say without a doubt, there's going to be so many demands made upon our governments, our communities, our families and friends for Aquarian idealistic, utopian ideals and programs, okay? Let's feed everybody. Let's give everybody, a working salary just for the hell of it. It's all this utopian Aquarian stuff. And if you go back and study ancient history, when you move from the ages, all right, the pendulum doesn't just swing slowly. As soon as you move in the age, the pendulum swings all the way over to one side and then all the way over to the other. And then over a few generations, it comes to the final thing, okay? At the moment, we're swinging all the way over to the societal side at the detriment of the individual, Okay. And all these demands, all these programs and opportunities, and senators do this, and president do that, and Biden save us, and all right, it's what it's going to do. It's literally going to overwhelm our government, overwhelm our society to the point of inaction. All right, we're going to feel like we're pushing the rock up the hill. Nothing's happening. It just keeps on rolling back down on us. This is another reason I feel a spark or a fuse is the right symbol for 2021. Every time I kept on contemplating this stuff, I kept on seeing, the old Mission Impossible, where they light the fuse at the beginning of the show, and dun 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 dun, and just fuses and fireworks and bombs and explosions and stuff, and it's like, oh man, okay, so. The fuse, the explosion is 2021. And how did I put it? Log jams be damned. Okay, get the dynamite out, Joe. We're going to blow this thing to smithereens. That's the attitude that most people are going to have in 2021. We would all do well in 2021 to pick one or two major promises or projects or purposes and just stick to those. No more than that. Okay, all the air signs, everybody's going to want to be putting their finger in everybody's pies, all right? Remember what I said about that scattershot approach at the beginning of the year, all right? There's this just explosion, it's gonna hit in every direction. No major focus, just blow it up. We'll worry about what happens later, okay? That's January and February. You don't have to be doing everything in 2021 yourself. Trust that there'll be plenty of other folks out there who'll be picking up where we do not want to tread. Forging new ideals, creating new programs, and hopefully correcting the mistakes of the past. Right? The Jupiter Saturn this cycle this time around actually has three manifestations. Like I said, the 20-year business cycle geared toward innovation and outsourcing, the 200-year grand mutation cycle or great mutation cycle geared toward knowledge over materialism. That's an important one, okay? For the last 200 years, they've been in earth signs, and that's money and toys, and whoever dies with the most stuff wins. That's ended. We're moving into almost 200 years of Jupiter Saturns and air signs, which is knowledge, okay? Knowledge. The last time this happened, that Jupiter and Saturn were in air sign, late 1100s into 1200s, 1300s, right? And this is knowledge spread around the planet. Okay. The 2000-year cycle has to do with the precession of the equinoxes, that earthly wobble that takes about 26,000 years to complete. Astrologers have varied ideas and theories as to when the shift from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius actually occurs. Although if you truly understand what Aquarius stands for, there's no doubt we're making the crossing into the Aquarian age now, okay? What most people forget is that the ages, they don't just snap into place. There are major transition zones that can take decades and even into the hundreds of years to traverse. It's obvious to most astrologers, that the mid-60s were the first forays into Aquarianism, right? And now that we are well on our way into the change, we still have to give it another decade or two or three even. And then there'll be no doubt, yet we're in the Aquarian age, okay? Just remember, Aquarius is rather emotionally stunted, yet intellectually brilliant, all right? So we're all gonna need to remember that the antidote to the cool, almost robotic approach to life that Aquarius can manifest lies in the sign opposite to Aquarius, and that sign's Leo, especially if we're to find the right balance of person to planet. Leos are the fiery hearts. Aquarians are the heady nerds of the zodiac, okay? Getting out of the mind and into the heart will bring balance to the age of Aquarius. What looks good on paper doesn't always translate well into action. And this is something we're all going to need to remember as we try to get that pendulum to center in the right place in the age of Aquarius. In January of 2020, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction gave us opportunities to toss on the compost pile of history the dead and dying systems, situations, and objects that had become life-negating ever since 2002. Then there were the 3 Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions, which I call the 3 turnings of the rototiller in April, June, and November of last year. Then to top it all off, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. This was the heating up of the compost pile, the spark of life, enshrining into that shit, okay, of 2020, right? The cosmic impregnation, that magical moment when the seed was brought to life. That's December of 2020. We just don't see it yet, okay? In 2021, we've got to water that seed, okay? Whether it's with the sweat of our brows or the tears from our eyes or whatever we come up with, so that come 2022, we begin to see these earthly gardens, these earthly new crops come and appear. There's some great ideas that will be sparked and will continue to be sparked as we move through 2021 and head for the mid-2020s. That's why I see a new roaring 20s ahead of us this decade. And it really does start off with a bang in 2021, starting with Mars having his final days in his ruling sign of Aquarius during the first week in January. Now, normally the tension Mars brings to his own sign would die down as he left the aggressive and enervating sign of Aries, okay? Thereupon entering the steady and stable sign of Taurus, but not this year, not with planet Uranus in Taurus, all right? This year, 2 weeks after Mars enters Taurus, Mars encounters Uranus, the radical, on Inauguration Day again. This is only going to ramp up tensions and cause some very explosive releases in January, even more so than usual. When we see that, Jupiter will be squaring Uranus at the same time, coming to a head on January 17th. I keep hearing the tune Burning Down the House by the Talking Heads when I think of this cosmic combination, right? I wrote quite a bit about this, about the excitement of early 2021 in my January 2021 forecast. So you can go to my website, Mount Shasta Astrologer, to read all about it. Subscribe if you want to continue to get monthly forecasts throughout 2021. So now there's no major conjunctions in 2021, okay? Like there were 5 of them in 2020. In 2021, we're dealing with all the births that are already taken place, especially those from 2020. In 2021, we will effort to bring those new births into their infancy. And I do want to emphasize the word effort. You see, the big news for 2021 still involves Jupiter and Saturn as it did in 2020. Although in 2021, what's added is the squaring of Jupiter and Saturn to Uranus. First, Jupiter squares Uranus in January, which adds to the whole explosive start to the year, right? Then Saturn drags out the mayhem and the magic throughout the year, okay? Squaring Uranus 3 times, February, June, and then December. There are 4 major square aspects in 2021 and not much else. A few eclipses, planets retrograding back and forth, so on and so forth. But it's those 4 major squares that give us the tenor for 2021. All right. It's not a year to coast downhill. It's a year to pedal uphill toward the top of the hill. We'll get to the top of the hill in the mid-20s, 2020s. Sweat equity is the main currency of 2021. We're talking adaptation, flexibility, determination, and resolve. The age of Aquarius is not all love and light. It's a masculine sign and it's cold and calculating. The archetypal Aquarian, as I like to say, will easily step over the bum to feed the whales, all right? Or try to save a sinking ship at the expense of the passengers on the ship. Fortunately, with Jupiter now in Aquarius for most of 2021, We're going to see the rollout of numerous new social programs designed to act as safety nets for this Aquarian stuff, for the majorities in society. Unfortunately, these new programs and new procedures will come at the expense of the individual. Those who draw outside the line, so to speak, will be left out on their own in 2021. Remember what Spock, the ultimate Aquarian persona, okay, in the Star Trek series, was it the Wrath of Khan? What he said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Yeah. Okay, this is the age of Aquarius that we're going to be living in. Okay, excuse my French, but fuck the few. Okay, they're going to want to take care of as many people as possible. And if you fall through the cracks, if you're outside the definitions of the norm, you're on your own. Okay, now this is true throughout the whole sweep of the pendulum back to center, which is going to take a few generations, but it's going to become very noticeable in 2021. Jupiter in Aquarius. Oh, okay. This is the age of Aquarius we live in, and we make our first forays into the ideal Aquarian society now as we're doing it. But it's not going to be until like the 23rd century, okay, when humanity finally gets the right balance and harmony of the many and the few, right? So that's why I'm always harping these last few years, teach your children well. The infancy of the age of Aquarius is going to be a real handful. And it's not till our children, our infants are old and aged, that they're going to have to set some of this stuff back on the proper thing. You think back to the last times this was, these were happening, the beginning of the country and so on, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What does that mean? It meant something way different then than it does now, all right? We need to back up in many ways to save the things from the past that are worth carrying over into the future of Aquarius. You don't just drop everything and then move into something new. That's not how it works. That's not how astrology develops. Now, Jupiter in Aquarius in 2021 is also the urge to expand beyond our cultural and governmental boundaries. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a new political party or two. Matter of fact, after I wrote this, it's already one of the conservative centers is, we need a new party. We need to get all the conservative, that's going to be happening. It's going to be fracturing. The Republicans and the Democrats both are going to be fracturing. They're going to be coming together in different parties that hopefully by 2022, they will be influential in the election, but definitely by 2024, the next Pluto, the next American presidential election, right on the Pluto return of the US. That's going to be an election that's going to need to be shepherded and protected and so on. This one, not so much. This one is about realizing the splinters we have in our own eye. This one's about realizing the faults that we need to correct going into the new cycle, into the new Pluto return. When Jupiter tests the waters of Pisces from May 14th to July 28th in 2021, we're going to see an increase in many church organizations and the compassionate nonprofits, all right, getting involved to address this coldness of Aquarius and the explosion of forgotten individuals that continue to fill our streets here, okay? We are also going to see an inordinate amount of heartstring tugging scams, okay, and swindles too. That's Pisces, unfortunately. Jupiter and Neptune together, grand Pisces. I mean, grand swindles, grand, so especially as Jupiter stays in Pisces going into 2022, and then conjuncts Neptune in Pisces in April of 2022. Talk about pipe dreams, okay? Not since 1854 and the heady California gold rush days have we seen this kind of thing happen. A new gold rush is upon us. Last time in 1854, the Jupiter Saturn conjunctions were in earth signs. This time they're in air. Okay, spiritual gold, not physical gold. The new gold rush, spiritual optimism, compassion, volunteerism. Knowledge is now going to start to fuel the dreams of many, as earthly riches did during the last 200 years. And this is a good thing, I think, for humanity. Last time the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions were in air, as they are as of 2021, as I mentioned already, they were in the late 1100s. We saw our knowledge spread around the planet, late 1100s for 200 years then, into the 1200s and into part of the 1300s. Right? This was when knowledge moved around the planet. Okay, it moved from the Asian to the Europeans. It spread. The universities, they all blossomed at this time. Right? Over this coming new 200-year cycle, once again in air signs, we're going to see that knowledge go off planet. We're going to see it spread through other planets to the stars. Mm-hmm. On a different topic, there's a system in astrological interpretation that I have found very telling. Okay, I've studied it for many years, and it basically layers the zodiac over and around the equator of the Earth, okay? Resulting in the planet being divided into 12 distinct geographical locations that tend to look like slices of a cantaloupe, thin at the poles and then 30 degrees wide at the equator all the way around. All right. If you were to plot this out on a globe, you'll see that the longitudinal locations of the demarcation lines between these 30-degree sections, what astrologers call cusps, they line up with at least 12 different sacred sites around the planet. This is way cool. Okay. Take the Sphinx, for example, which is located at 31.1376 degrees east longitude. Okay. On a globe. So if you want to do this at home, take your globe, mark the 31.1376 degrees of longitude. All right. Then moving eastward around the globe, mark off 30-degree sections all the way around. 61.1376, 91.1376, all the way around till you come back to the Sphinx again. All right. You'll see that the Sphinx quite literally represents the Leo Virgo cusp. All right. What you want to do is from the 31 degree to the 61 degree mark that as Leo, as Virgo. All right. From the 31 degree back to the 1 degree, which would be westward from the Sphinx, mark that as Leo. So you got Leo and Virgo with the Sphinx right in the middle, right? Then continue eastward around. After Virgo, the next 30 degree is going to be Libra, then Scorpio, and all the way around, and you're going to come back around to Leo and Virgo. Right? Now you have your sections of the planet. Right? It's this is wonderful for weather forecasting, wonderful events. When we had last year, when we had the Mars, a few years ago, when we had the Mars retrograding and causing all sorts of problems, it was in Aquarius. The only landmass we have in Aquarius is Hawaii in Aquarius, and we had the volcano go off in Hawaii. Right? On and on and on. So now we're having, again, Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius, and look what's happening again in Hawaii. Right? This is the Pacific Northwest coast ends up being Pisces. Most of the United States, the middle of the US ends up being Aries, and then the East Coast ends up being Taurus, right? And then around the planet, right? So now go back and look at where Mount Shasta is in this system. Okay, I'll tell you, all right?
Thank you.
So Mount Shasta is at 122.3106 west longitude, which translates in this system to the last 2 degrees of Pisces. That's the end of the zodiac. And where the beginning of the natural zodiac starts anew again in Aries. Right? You get to the end of the Pisces, you start over again. It's the whole new cycle again. So Mount Shasta is one of the sacred spots on the planet that is at the end of the zodiac. It's the jumping off point of the planet. okay? Here's where we get to play the chrysalis, getting ready to emerge from its cocoon. Mount Shasta represents the jumping off point of the world. It's the crown chakra, not the root chakra, like everybody seems to think that this is. It's not. Pisces is the crown, okay? It's at the end of the cosmic road, the cosmic crossroad, if you will. Mount Shasta is exactly 77 miles due west of the Pisces Aries cusp. What's most important about this location and why I'm harping on it here, one, because it's one of the reasons I moved to Mount Shasta, right? But at this time in history is that the coming Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that we're going to see in 2022 happens at 24 degrees of Pisces.
So,
Okay, very close to, figuratively speaking, being right over Mount Shasta. Jupiter, Neptune in conjunction in Pisces. Again, this hasn't happened since 1854. And so this is good for the whole Pacific Northwest coast, the Jupiter, Neptune conjunction in Pisces, right? Last time this happened, it was the gold rush, the whole Pacific Northwest coast. Boom, everybody was dreaming, wow, you know. So in like 2 years' time at the most, what I'm saying is we're going to have this new spiritual gold rush in Mount Shasta and the Pacific, all across the Pacific Northwest coast. We're being given the mantle of Pisces, okay, which is kind of, you know, universal love and spirituality as it pertains to the rest of the world. Somehow we're going to end up being an example for that. The whole Pacific Northwest coast, okay? I could not think of a better way or a better place to usher in Aquarius, the Piscean successor, especially as we see that Saturn, the cosmic building contractor, an ancient ruler of Aquarius, is going to be in Aquarius while this is happening, and as it unfolds through March of 2023. This is a great thing for Mount Shasta, the whole Pacific, and foretells a continual shift towards spiritual tourism and sacred sites up and down the Northwest states these next few years. And again, this was one of the reasons I wanted to move here. I wanted to be here for that, okay? But and it was early on in the 80s when I first learned about this geodetic system and saw that Mount Shasta was at the end of the zodiac. I said, okay, if I'm worth my weight in salt, I could come up here and make a name for myself. Okay, with all of this that's coming down in 2021 and 2022, astrology is going to begin its elevation to an official science once again, with Saturn and Aquarius especially, right? Especially with the transiting of Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. It's only a few years, but it starts the ball rolling for the age of Aquarius, which is going to put astrologers back in those empty chairs in Harvard University, and it's going to make the universities that are out there that are teaching astrology now, it's going to make them mainstream. The Yale and those guys are going to want to absorb these independents into them and start using that, because we can see this. We can see this happen. We see it in jury selection. They're using astrologers to pick the right people for jurors, to make sure that they have the right attitude to get the right thing. They're using it in medical history. One of these days, I want to write a story that basically says we have this huge supercomputer that can pinpoint every single location on the earth and every single birth and so on, and find out where the masters are going to be born and when. Go there and come on, you're signed up. We're going to take care of you for the next 20 years because we know you're going to be, you know, this is going to become a thing. And it has the same sort of detriments as the medical profession does too. There's going to come a point where we're going to need to keep our birth data private, because people are going to be able to take this stuff put it on Facebook, and then Facebook's going to start sending you ads according to your Mars and Aries, or whatever. And it works. This works. So it's, good and bad, but it's going to become a discipline, and it's going to become regulated much better than it is now. Privacy issues are going to get a boost, okay, with Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. Internet privacy startups, especially over these next few years, companies like Inrupt and Personium, or two that have come into being, right, should make great gains these next few years, right? But ultimately, they're going to have a real hard time in the mid-20s, all right? So for like the next 2 years, decent investments, but then get out, okay? Last spring, as I was forecasting what to expect from Saturn's first foray into Aquarius in 27 years, I spoke of the many systems and ideals that would be floated in society at that time, and that those ideas and systems needed to be vigorously responded to on a massive scale in 21 and 22. All right. They needed to be vigorously responded to at the time when it happened, when Saturn went into Aquarius for a few months back in 2020. All right. And that if we didn't respond to them, they were going to get rolled out big time in 2021 and 2022. All right. I have this down. I mentioned it a few times in my forecasts last year in the springtime. All right. When Saturn moved into Aquarius in the spring of 2020, what did we see? The lockdowns, the restrictions, the quarantines, the Rockefeller Foundation, that was the white paper on Common Pass, which is just like, that was published in April, by the way. It's a very invasive medical passport system where your medical records get called up by the guy at the counter, whether you're going to get let on an international flight or not. Okay. One of the other things, we saw the Great Reset announcement. Okay. Right at the same time by the World Economic Forum in June, while Saturn was tiptoeing, taking let's go see what we can get away with here. Let's Saturn in Aquarius. Okay. And the whole time Saturn was flirting with Aquarius, we saw a rash of turn over your safety to me and I will save you situations. New inventions, new techniques. Saturn in Aquarius is where the inventor is inspired to develop these new inventions and new techniques, new systems, new distinctions, and unfortunately, new ways to corral and control the masses. That's Saturn. Define them, put them in a box, get as many of them together as we can, and get them all moving in the same direction. And now that Saturn is solidly in Aquarius for the next few years, we're going to see the heavy and continual rollout of these and other restrictive measures, unfortunately. And we may very well be stuck with them until the mid-30s, possibly even into the mid-50s, if we do not respond accordingly and keep the pressure on during the new birth in 2021 and 2022. This is why I've been harping on teaching our children again about our past, for they're likely going to be the ones that have to restore our liberties. Again, there's a few different indicators that talk about this. Teach your children history. In 2021, we continue the reign of Uranus and Taurus, which started back in early 2018 and continues well into 2025. Uranus is the disruptor, the innovator. It's in Taurus, the sign of agriculture, assets, and sensual pleasures. This is and has always been food shortages, supply line disruptions, stocks and banking runs, and extreme weather events. And this time around, we have the added developments of cryptocurrency issues and climate change crises. And Uranus and Taurus is going to continue to give us extreme weather disruptions, and crop failures are going to continue to rise. these next few years, regardless of climate change, okay? Which is why I've been harping for the last few years too on the idea of home gardens. If you don't want to have to pay $10 for an organic pepper by 2025. Just in the last 2 years, as Uranus has been fully in Taurus, we've seen the price get damn close, okay? Not too long ago, I was in the local market, which will remain nameless, and the price for organic broccoli was $10.99 a pound.
Oh, I know where that market was.
It's like, holy, it was $1 more in the other store, okay? Last time Uranus was in Taurus, we had victory gardens. This time around, we need vitality gardens. Oh, and I find it interesting that the politically correct phrase now is climate change and no longer global warming. All right? It turns out global warming is a natural cycle, okay? Which of course doesn't absolve us of continuing to reduce global pollutants, but it does tell me that mankind is not the only cause of the warming trend here, okay? Nature is complicit too. For the whole solar system's heating up in one way or another right now, all due to what I call space junk, all right? And a rise in galactic space dust, debris, and cosmic wave radiations, formations, and so on. Google Dr. Alexei Dmitriev, all right? He first proposed this back in 1990s, and it's now been confirmed, all right? The leading edge of our solar system's magnetic field, which is generated by the sun, acts like the heat shield on the space shuttle when it's coming back into orbit and moving through the pressure and the resistance of the atmosphere, right? Whipping it into a frenzy, right? The solar system, as it's moving kilometers, hundreds of kilometers a second through the galaxy, that leading edge of that solar magnetosphere has increased, has turned glowing hot white, has increased tenfold since the 1990s, okay? And it's affecting all the planets in our solar system, not just the Earth. The Earth is not the only thing that's getting warmer, okay? It's not all about us doing it to the Earth. Pluto's atmosphere is getting darker and denser and has increased in pressure by 300%. Neptune's light has been rising in intensity. Uranus is having polar shifts. Saturn's having increased auroras, and the belts are decaying faster than they thought, the bands, okay? Jupiter's magnetosphere has increased so much that if we could see it, Jupiter would look about the size of the moon in the sky. Even the sun's magnetic field has increased by 230% just in the 20th century, okay? So the climate is changing, yes, but call it what it really is. It's not global system warming. It's solar system warming, okay? So in 2021, it's going to be difficult to go against the grain, to swim upstream, so to speak, but it'll pay off big time with those 3 squares from Saturn this year. And since they're closing squares, or what's called third quarter squares, they will keep on paying off on through the next generation. You'll see, as part of the whole understanding of the different phases of a cycle, that the fact that square aspects can only be of 2 type, either an opening square during that first half, that opening phase where there's potential and there's growth and there's opportunity and so on. And then the only other time you can have a square is when it's in the closing phase. You either have an opening phase square or a closing phase square. The 4 squares in 2021 are all closing phases. Okay, this is important here. That this lengthens the time that it's going to take for all of the things that are born now to develop. It's going to be after we reach the actual conjunctions and phase shifts at the end of these closing phases, the 4 that we now have, 3 of which disappear by 2026, okay? It's not going to be until we get there that much of what we start this year we'll finally see peace, okay? We'll finally see, yes, we made it. Yes, it's done, okay? Opening squares are about attainment. Closing squares are more about legacy, okay? The seventh generation, if you will, which is a good thing in 2021 if we're committed to the long haul, right? If you're gonna just jump in and do a little bit and go, no, I'm going back, I'm just gonna hide in my house in 2021. So that's not what we have in store in 2021. 2021, you know, we have a new puppy here, and he's 9 months old now. But when we got him, he was this big. And it's like, I look at him now and he's this big, and it's like, where did that come from? Okay, that's the opening square stuff. The closing square stuff is when, once he's grown, and then he starts to learn and starts to get all the patterns and starts, you know, everybody starts recognizing him in the community and what he has to offer and all this. That's closing squares. Okay? Maybe the dog's not the best example, but closing squares take time to consolidate and wrap up the lessons of the cycle. If you harvest a seed too early, it's not going to be any good when you need it in the years to come. 2021 is very much about planning and directing our attentions to the next generation, not our current state of affairs. The things that we do, we have to do them like the old Iroquois. You know, they're not going to make a decision unless they understand what it was going to be for the seventh generation out. Maybe we don't have to go that far, okay? But at least the next generation or two. 2021 is about preparing for the future and learning from the past. We have to have one eye firmly focused on where we want to be 3, 5, 10 years from now, and the other eye focused on watching our backs, okay? When the halls of power continue to crumble, as they will in 2021, it is usually the common man or woman that takes the brunt. There will be noticeable setbacks as 2021 unfolds, especially late January into the middle of February, June into early July, and most of December. In 2021, the overlords of society, as I would call them, are using a war of attrition strategy. That's what we're up against in 2021. 4 squares, okay? 2020 weakened society. 2021 is going to break it down even more. If we succumb to the pressure, if we bow to the defeat. Elbow grease is one of the keys to getting the most out of 2021. Persistent, rigorous pressure applied to the problem areas. And with both Jupiter and Saturn and Aquarius in 2021, we have a good chance of coming out on top eventually. So, sorry. We have a long, irritating, exhausting, yet exciting slog ahead of us in 2021. It's similar, when I was thinking on this, I said it's similar to the roll of the dice, invest all you have business startup venture, where you don't eat or sleep for weeks on end and you're striving to grow your vision and keeping yourself from ending up in the poorhouse or on the streets, right? In 2021, we will see hundreds of these cosmic startups. We're going to see massive amounts of new business ventures that come into being, okay? Triggering an uphill battle that'll continue all the way to 2026. If they make it through 2021, they're worth investing in. Outside of those tech companies that I said are going to kind of recede a little bit in the mid-20s. Think of it as your cosmic 5-year business plan from 21 to 2026. 2021 is where we pull the trigger on the plan. Fortunately, we have a very bright light to follow, that Christmas star back in December of 2020. The Jupiter Saturn conjunction in the sign of men and angels, to help guide us through the 2020s and on into the Aquarian age. And I wrote down, power to the people in 2021. And power to the people, right? So It's going to be a wild ride in 2021, and it's going to start very quickly in the days to come. Hold on tight. It will be worth the ride. And trust in the fact that your children and your children's children will remember fondly what went down in 2021. What do you want to be remembered for? It's time to double down in 2021. Definitely. So thank you. Let me just go through the advertising part, and then we'll do the questions and stuff. So please like this video so YouTube makes it available more to the public, okay? You can subscribe to my channel, Mount Shasta Astrologer, on YouTube or SoundCloud. If you want to get notified about any of my future comments on the cosmos, you can check out my website, MountShastaAstrologer.com. Sign up, receive free monthly written astrology forecasts, or maybe you want to schedule a reading with me. You won't be disappointed. I've been at it 42 years. You can check out some of the testimonials from past clients on my website. Thank you. And once again, everybody, plan to make some sparks in 2021. It's the best time in many years to do so. So until next time. Okay. I know if I didn't write that down, I would have jumped, I would loaded third house, I would have jumped all over the place. And yeah. So questions?
This one is a quickie one. What is the conjunction in Pisces that's super yummy, the end of the zodiac? When is that happening, and which it's Jupiter and
Jupiter conjunct Neptune.
Neptune. Okay.
At 24 degrees of Pisces in April of 2022. And we haven't had a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces since 1854. Neptune was in Pisces the whole time in the gold rush.
That's what
And you know, and then the Jupiter-Pluto was,
and Shasta, it's a big important.
yeah, and for that geodetic system that I talked about, Mount Shasta sits at the last 2 degrees of Pisces. I mean, just on a world zodiac kind of thing. In any Aries to Pisces, Pisces is where you've done everything, you've finished, you've turned the seed, and you move on to the next cycle. You're evolving, you're transforming. The Pacific Northwest coast in general, Mount Shasta is the main sacred site, okay? But we get the benefits of that. You know, I've been trying to bring this into the consciousness of the local Chamber of Commerce, telling them they have to ready for this.
Oh yeah.
Okay, there's
People are coming.
yeah, people are coming. And there's the scams that are coming with it. There's there's the thefts and the homelessness and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, there will be the various metaphysical or religious masters that move here, that come here. Now Shasta is, I'm not quite sure how, but somehow it's going to end up getting rediscovered. The Pacific Northwest is going to become a Mecca place to come to because of some idealistic potential that is available. So
I think it's happening already.
yeah, it has been. It has literally been since about what, 2011, I think. Since, okay, and it's moving. But we're going to, as soon as Jupiter goes into Pisces for a few months in 2021, and then out again, and then in next year, we're going to see it start to happen this year for a few months. Yeah, right. I know. So,
I had a
question. Okay.
It's very interesting to me how the Aquarian energy is going to play out in these next 2 years. It makes me think, like, you know, so yes, it's all about kind of like thinking about the masses instead of the individual. But Uranus, which rules Aquarius along with Saturn, is about individuality. So is it about, like, you know, if you are going to be an individual, then this is going to be your time to do it. You can conform, or you can be you. You can
Break away.
Yes, and that'll be the few, and it'll be harder, but it'll be better for you.
Yes. What is, remember, Leo is the antidote to Aquarius. It's always the opposite sign of the zodiac from the one that you're dealing with, is how you balance out the positive and negative attributes of any sign. What is Leo? Leo's the leader, all right? Leo's the king. Follow me, respect me. I am worth respecting because I am doing this. The queen, all right? It is about deserving honor and respect, okay? But there are not that many kings and queens out there, okay? And it takes a lot to become one. And the people that only do it half-heartedly are the ones that fall through the cracks, are the ones that only do it halfway and aren't willing to stand up and say, I'm taking over, okay? I'm gonna lead. So there is a dichotomy. I mean, that's Uranus, that's Aquarius. It's a dual sign. Uranus, by the way, I have a point about Uranus being the ruler of Aquarius. I often think that Pluto should be the ruler of Aquarius, right? But that's another whole talk. Right? And if you think of the symbol of Uranus, what is it comprised of? It's comprised of the circle, the identity, with the cross of matter over the circle, all right? Which is saying is that physicality is worth more than the spirit. Right? But then there are the two moons and they're facing opposite each other. So there's this duality. There's you go this way and then you go that way and you go that. It's the push me, pull you.
It's the
Okay.
chaos.
It's the chaos. Yeah.
It's a genius.
Right. What's that fine line between genius and mental
Yes, yes.
instability?
Yeah.
That's Uranus, okay? You know, actually, if that's any of the outer planets, remember Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, if you're gonna partake of those, you better do it for something other than just your own personal satisfaction and gratification, because it will burn you up. These are transpersonal energies. If you have a sun conjunct Uranus in your natal chart, or a moon conjunct Pluto or something like that, any of the luminaries conjunct these outer ones, especially, okay? Then you need to do this way.
So right now we're kind of dealing with the Saturnian aspect of the Aquarius age, but the Uranian aspect is the revolution and the rebellion, and that's what's going to be necessary if we're going to, well, get through the 20s.
Well, yes, and Saturn, as the ruler of Aquarius, was the karma come home to roost.
Okay,
For what?
somebody comes in,
Sure. I mean, we're almost over, but it's,
come on in.
Quick question.
did I answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody wanted to know here.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Sure. Actually, it was January, February, which I know it's ahead of us, and usually months go by pretty quick, but then you concentrate a lot of our talk on those 2 months, you know, and the word that jumped out is accident, and I'm already kind of accident prone, so like, should I just, I know you said don't lock
Bubble
yourself in
wrap.
the house.
Lots and lots of bubble wrap.
Like slow down, right? Like literally, look at this. This was 2 hours this morning. I dumped hot water on her.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, yeah.
Well, one of the big things is Uranus and Mars, they ramp up the tension, all right? So how do you unwind it?
Mm.
Spend a lot of time doing the unwinding part, all right? Dissipate the energy. And another way to do it is head Uranus off at the path, okay? Instead of waiting to get 2x4'd by Uranus in some accident or something, take on some new and unique or something you've always wanted to do, and you know, pour your adrenaline and testosterone and all of those things into that, all right? Focus it. Don't just let it scattershot. Like I said, there's a scattershot approach to January and February. And yes, I know I spent a lot of time talking about January and February because for 2021, because it's critical. It's critical. The things that trigger and unfold and snowball and start in January 21 just get hashed over and over and over and over again through the rest of the year.
Does the 4 square squares, they're all in January or?
No, there's the Jupiter-Uranus square is in January,
Oh, okay.
which is the real big explosive
Right.
one, all right? And then there's 3 Saturn square Uranus, all right,
Uh-huh.
over the course of the rest, February, June, and December.
Ah, that makes sense. And that actually matches the low, the dips, yes, too.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got it.
that's part of it. I was also looking at the Mercury retrogrades and a few other things, and so now think about this: Jupiter and Uranus. I mean, Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is about form and definition and cohesiveness and constriction and so on, and Uranus is about no form. I don't want form. I don't want, how do you retain genius? What kind of model does it go in? There are no Saturnian definitions for that. There are no Saturnian containers that are going to hold Uranian energy. So when you put Saturn and Uranus together, we're going to have, remember, Saturn is the one that's acting on Uranus. Saturn's the faster moving planet that's making the aspect to Uranus. All right. So that's why I say it's going to be irritating and pushing uphill and so on, because the powers that be in anything, whether it's the parents of the home or the boss or the government or whatever, they're all going to be trying to do the Saturn thing and clamp down and wait, got to keep it, or everybody's got to be vaccinated, or everybody's got to have a job, or they want everything to be all nice and fit in a proper package so that they can be ruled. Saturn is the taskmaster at the back of the schoolyard or school room while the teacher's teaching, and every now and then you're trying to get it and you hear that's Saturn going, pay attention, do your work, do your homework, get the right grades, and then I will respect you. That's going to be what everybody tries to do in 2021. But they're trying to do it while it's squaring Uranus. And a square, no less, is like trying to take a square Saturn peg and put it in a round Uranian hole. At some point, you're just going to pull out the hammer and try and slam it in there, which is going to be the reactions that happen this year. But Uranus is going to say, no, we can't do this. We can't go back to this. We can't put everybody in the same thing. All right. So that's the negative side of Saturn. And the positive side of Saturn is you get your just reward. You can't do major things in the world unless you have a good Saturn transit to come through in your chart to ground out the energy.
That's like what you said, the sweat equity.
The sweat equity.
That's the
Yeah.
Saturn's still keeping that.
Right. Now, none of it really grounds out in 2021,
It's gonna be bigger.
later on, okay? But in general, with Saturn, it's the long slug, and as long as you are doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, when you do get to the fruition phase, to the harvest phase, you get what you deserve, your just reward. If you've treated everybody right, you're elevated. If you've screwed people along the way, especially with this Jupiter Neptune coming up, the scams and stuff, if you take part of that, you're going to get very bitter, very introverted, very ineffective in the world come the mid-20s. Okay, so question.
Yeah. So when you have 2 planets, Saturn and Uranus, for instance, it seems to me that like the slower moving planets, typically the more powerful ones, the transpersonal ones, and that they're more powerful.
Right.
So the authority, the idea of everyone's got to get vaccinated and this and that,
No.
it just can't.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, it'll happen, but it's
It'll
going to fall
happen,
apart
but
before it's.
It has to.
Yes.
It's nature will not let it.
Yeah, Uranus is the strong one here.
Yeah.
Okay, first it gets pumped up by Mars, right? First thing, you know, so it's already jacked up going through the rest of the year. And so, and then Jupiter square Uranus, that's a pretty unrestrained aspect. You know, again, it's like a scattershot approach. It's like, let's throw everything against the wall and whatever sticks, let's go with that, you know. But then Uranus is going to go, no, I want the thing that went through the wall. You know, I'm not going to stick with what stopped with the Saturn definition.
Or at the very least, I don't want this.
Right.
And whatever comes.
Right.
Comes,
This
you know?
is, yeah, this is not it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I do. Keep
Anyone
going.
else?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm a fire sign, so you said fire signs can kind of chill out in 2021. So can I like still keep at it, like, you know, put in the sweat, but like kind of chill out?
Compared to 20,
You say 1 to 2 goals, Harry, not more than
But
that.
no, that's what I'm saying. I don't want more than that.
compared,
I want to chill out, like energetically, just been like more of a pressure cooker. I felt like, so I don't know. I just want a little chill.
I was using those definitions as a comparison to 2020.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
comparison to
Just a
2020,
little chill.
the fire signs get the chill.
Right.
Okay. But the fire signs in particular, with the 2 full moons in Leo,
Right.
get a double whammy in the summer. So they get jacked up a little bit more again in the summer.
Okay.
Right? But in general, fire signs don't do well with all of the fixed signs that we have now happening in 2020. So rather than bang your head against the wall,
Okay.
just chill. You know, wait until the following year, wait until other years, and then really pour yourself into it. In many ways, for the fire signs, 2021 is a chance to go, okay, I have to back up. This last 12 months, 16 months has just been, you know, let me relax.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with that same idea, having had so many Earth on this last year, how is the Earth signs and Earth sign energy moving into 2021 overall? Because we've been hammered on Earth this last year. So can you talk a little bit more about those Earth signs and Earth energy?
Well, what are the earth signs?
Virgo,
Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. Okay. Capricorn just went through the ringer, right? With the 3 planets. 2 of them finally moved out, but Pluto's still there. Uranus is still in Taurus, right? Virgo is the one that had it easy this year. All right. With the aspects, yeah, with the aspects. The trine to the Capricorn, you know, and the trine to Taurus, actually made a grand trine this year for them, right? But in 2021, that grand trine disappears for 2 out of the 4 planets that were involved in the grand trine. So it's weakening, all right? And, you know, this is very generic what I'm talking about. If you've got, you know, 5 planets in Sag, or, you know, 8 planets in Virgo, it's what I say has to be adjusted for your chart.
We can dig into that tomorrow.
Yes, we will be digging into that tomorrow.
Gonna stir
So-
the pot.
Yeah, by the way, we're doing a workshop tomorrow, 10 to 6. I'm calling it 2021 and Me. It's a detailed analysis of the person's personal transits all through the year. And we're going to work those. We're going to define those. We're going to answer people's questions around them and so on, and teach people how to read transit data.
So I've got a question. So for those of us that teach and lead, that have been able to learn and adapt in over the years with the current materialistic standpoint, and yet be on the fringe, just enough on the materialistic to be successful, be on the fringe of the spiritual, the cosmic. is there any insights into how to start to direct, you know, those powers that be into that new realm that we're moving into?
Okay, well, first thing is, that's why I gave you the green folder.
I was wondering why I had a green one.
Because I knew you were the money man. You were gonna be thinking about the money.
You know, we have discussions about the colors of the folder, like, there's a whole side debate about the colors, you
Yeah.
know?
Okay, now, the other thing, the first thing is patience. Big time patience in 2021 with your employees, with your bosses and everything, because there's going to be massive amounts of resistance to the change. And you just have to feed it to them little by little, you know, and you have to think in a 5-year plan. 2021 is a whole new plan. Ditch whatever business plans that everybody's been using and formulate, take 2021 to formulate the next 5 years. So there's that, all right? As far as Earth, the Earth element itself, okay? What I'm starting to think about is how they just found this fungi that's growing inside of Chernobyl that's eating the radiation.
Yeah.
It's an Earth thing. It's growing, but it's going to take care of it. They're now turning mushrooms into eating plastics, but making mushroom packing
Yeah.
things.
Oh, yeah, and leather too,
And-
or material.
So then you take it and break it up in your yard. So this is Uranus and Taurus. This is the ability to incite new ways of using the physical realm in ways for distribution, for money. It's the whole cryptocurrency thing, you know, by the way, which will peak as Uranus leaves the end of Taurus. So I had said this back at the beginning in 2019. By then, when it was at 3,000, 3,500, and hold on to it until 2025. And then it would be worth probably about 80,000 each. It's up to what, 20, 23 or something like that now. And everybody's like, oh, I'm going to cash out now. No, just wait. Just ride through the whole Uranus. And when they finally figure out all the currency issues, by the time Uranus gets into Gemini, all right, that's when it will peak. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I think the key to that was more, well, what resonated with me was the patience, because in 2020, what I found over the past probably 5 to 6 years is me not having the patience to continue to, so I left one corporation and then I joined a smaller one, now it's become a bigger one again. And so it's like, people don't get it. And so I don't have the patience is what it is. So I'm really struggling with that on both ends, right? It's the employees that don't get it, and then it's the upper management that doesn't get it either. And how do you take that and be able to take the ones that are following so that they understand, they trust you and they understand where you're going, but yet then try to, you know, lead upwards and guide those people where they don't know where they need to go. And that's been the difficulties, having the patience to do that, or how to make that, how to break through so that their light bulb goes off.
Yeah. Pay attention to what the businesses do the first 2 months, because again, that's going to be the stuff that you're going to have to push back against all year.
Okay.
You know, and I can't stress that enough with this 2021. And so even with the employees, the people that get rattled, or the people that
How do you get them to,
do things that you wouldn't expect, you know, it's like, well, how do you calm them down for the rest of the year? How do you get them on an even keel after that? It's, the big word is patience. You're in it for the long haul in 2021. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Any advice for anyone going through a Uranus opposition in this Uranus oriented time frame?
Well, especially as the Mars conjuncts Uranus, bubble wrap. You know, I mean, that's Mars Uranus opposite Uranus.
And my son, so I'm a little worried.
Well, it's the kind of thing, the examples I usually give is you get so wound up, you get to a stop sign, boom, you know, you go out, you're not paying attention. Situational awareness. You know, if somebody's doing a chainsaw 5 feet away from you, move out of the way. You know, don't tempt fate. Mars Uranus, I mean, Mars Uranus can even be stuff falls out of the sky, you know, but usually with Taurus, it's usually more earth things. You know, it's food poisoning. Okay, you stay away from shoddy restaurants under something like that.
Okay. I'm already like feeling it in my body pretty much. So I mean, there's that, but just you know, is it just a matter of just be prepared for anything? You know, just be careful. That's it.
Yeah. That's what Uranus in astrology. It's like
I know.
just like people say, what's the sun in astrology? You know, it's indefinable. It's so large, so big. With Uranus, you rarely, the main thing you could define about Uranus is you're really not going to expect which way that it's coming. You're going to be watching over there and it's going to slap you from over there or something.
Do I have some sort, since Uranus, like my sun is conjunct Uranus, is there some kind of like, is it a matter of like, if I just tap into that energy or something, it'll come out a little better? I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking about
How old are you?
I'm 44.
44. So you're in the Uranus opposite? You're done?
Right.
With it?
No, it's
Still hitting.
yes. My Uranus is center at 7. Uranus is at 6. It's going to go back again in February. It's going to go back over. So I have a little bit left.
Yeah. So the big thing, I mean, Sun Uranus, you've probably spent your life making sudden changes, you know, but now with the opposition and the Mars Uranus opposition, Mars conjunct Uranus opposite Uranus in Scorpio, okay? That's kind of like saying, like I said, let's say, hey, Joe, give me the dynamite. We're just going to blow this thing to smithereens. You know, no, I'm not just going to work around it anymore. I'm going to go straight through the middle. You know, I don't know if that makes sense, right? But it's Sun Uranus in general. People see you, and they never know
Yes.
exactly what foot you're going to come on.
Right.
You know, or how you're going to step off, you know. So with the Uranus opposition, take that by the horn, take the bull by the horns. Do new things, do things that you've always sort of kept yourself inhibited from doing, but that you want to release. I mean, Uranus opposition, you get to look at your whole life and go, am I on the right path? If not, here's my chance. Here's my major chance. You don't get that many of these kind of chances to shift midstream and go off and do something that can be more exciting, more Uranian, more, you know. And if it means staying where you are, you should get promoted. You should, you know, all of a sudden the world opens up and you start flowering. If that's not happening, you're in the wrong place. Okay. And if you're in the wrong place, this is the time
Start thinking about things.
to make the plunge, take the shift. You know, look at where Uranus, what house it's in, where it is, how it aspects the other planets, all these kind of things that'll give you more of a definition of how to thread the needle. You know.
Yeah.
But it's about pretty much chucking it.
Yeah.
You know, anything that's just doing a Saturn thing this year,
Gotta go.
most notably for you because of the Uranus opposition.
You know,
Okay.
opposition, my sun and Uranus, so it's like just, so it's everything.
Mhm.
My whole sense of self. Okay, well, that's as good as it's gonna get.
I could probably ask this tomorrow if you have more energy. I had one more question.
Sure. Does it apply to?
Oh, yeah.
within-
It actually is, I think either at our reading or multiple times last year, you've mentioned that like 20, cleaning the cup 2020, rototiller, but 2021 will have a little bit of release, kind of strong, little tough beginning. But I remember you saying at the end of the year, oh yeah, you wrote beautiful, like put the cup that you cleaned so good, it's gonna overflow at the end of 2021. It's
No,
almost waiting for
I
that
didn't say.
punch, and
I may have said start to overflowing, but
it's gonna start
what I
raining.
said,
Remember the
is you start to fill it back up.
Yeah.
Okay. It will get to overflowing.
Okay,
It doesn't just boom, all overflow suddenly.
so you gotta put in that work in a way, right? That in
Yeah.
the beginning.
Yeah. But we pretty well now have, for most people, an empty cup.
Uh-huh.
And as of the Jupiter Saturn, we can start to fill it up again. Between now and 2025,
Okay.
it will overflow. It will
Got it.
start overflowing.
Yeah.
Do something with it. You just,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have my umbrella to go dance in the rain. I'm ready to dance in the rain.
Last one. You talk about the big Sagittarian old matrix, and there's a lot that getting back into those patterns as the Saturn. Sorry.
Saturn, okay,
Yeah,
Saturn, yes.
And we have the little pinpoints of those that have started to reveal since 2000, right?
Mhm.
And you said again, you have to keep it up because they're going to continue to try to at the beginning of this year. And so, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that one was just like really resonating. Because that's a lot of the people in the awakening generations are doing, right? And we've been pushed by all these 2020 shifts.
Okay, Saturn's a cold sign.
Yeah.
Saturn's a cold planet.
It's such a
So
big-
All right. It doesn't care about whether a person's crying or whatever. It's just going to give you your reward or your karma. Okay. Aquarius is a cold sign. Saturn and Aquarius together. It's going to be, don't bitch to us about whether you can get on a plane or not, or whether this or that. This is what we have to do to keep society going. Okay. Once Saturn gets out of Aquarius into Pisces, that'll soften it. That's when we get the religious leaders, we get the mystical orientations, we get more of the compassion coming back into these situations. And we do have a slight forerunner with Jupiter going into Pisces this year for a few months and then all of next year. All right. And so little by little, a little bit this year for a few months in 2021, a lot in 2022. And then by the time Saturn gets into Pisces in 24 and 25, then we're going to see the proper Piscean love thy neighbor approach. Okay. So, again, I'm not sure that answered your question.
Keep it up.
Well, yeah, again, I can't stress this. Saturn's a 30-year cycle. You only get 2, maybe 3, if you're lucky in life. Jupiter's 12 years. Even Mars is 2 years. We just had the conjunction, not even 3 weeks ago? That's nothing in astrological time. So Keep it up.
Keep waking people up,
Yeah.
keep stirring the pot.
Do you have a question? No, you sure? You looked like you were tuning.
No.
But a lot of stuff's resonating a lot of stuff you've mentioned, it's been coming up just in natural conversation. Like, you know, like we've talked about technology and how you can't fight the upgrades or the 5G. You kind of have to learn how to work with it. And in a way, if we want to, you know, be with the flow, you got to work with it. So that was one thing we talked about.
5G is a waveform.
Yeah.
Right? It's a frequency, which means that it can be counterbalanced, counteracted
Yeah.
by another frequency.
Frequency, right. Like you
Alright.
can't be with fear, you can't face things like that.
Yeah.
You gotta, so that's one thing we're talking, and then we talked about how people are gonna come to Shasta, and we were just saying how this year, I'm hearing the word Shasta out of the most random places that I didn't before, you know, so I was like,
Yeah.
people are coming, and then you started talking about that as a longer, you know, projection, but.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, we were just nodding a lot of heads about.
What I want to share is that I'm an artist, so hearing all that stuff, it's like a lot of words, but if I close my eyes or I zone out, I can visually see it. So that's yeah.
Yeah, I'm a very mental person.
So-
Data, you know.
Right. So for me, it was like I'm just like absorbing it. I don't even know. I don't have anything to ask. It's just more like I wanted to share that. It was cool to hear it because then it's like giving me all these visuals.
Good.
And it's just awesome.
That's- That's the intention.
That's why I'm like, it's
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know?
Any questions? Do you?
No, thank you. I really, I'm taking it all in. I'm drinking from the fire hose.
Okay.
So you outside?
I was listening on Zoom. I didn't get down the mountain quick enough to be here in person. I didn't want to interrupt during the Zoom dropped, so I thought it was over.
It did?
Well, my Zoom dropped.
Yeah, it's still going.
Okay, it just stopped dropped.
You're like, what?
Yeah, say what?
That's possible. The commercial break and then my Zoom dropped.
You're thinking of doing another class maybe towards the end of, or fall of this year,
Oh,
maybe?
well, the 26-hour class that I just did.
Yeah,
I want to refine that, edit it up a bit, put in the PowerPoints and stuff like that, and then be able to sell that and market it as a downloadable,
Yeah.
send you the booklet with all the, so I'm gonna try and refrain from doing another class
No, that makes
until I
sense.
get that done.
no, that makes sense.
Yeah, you know, so it's gonna be very busy with chart readings this already. I'm already a few weeks ahead of myself here. And so I don't think I'm gonna have a whole lot of time to do other classes.
It's
So,
gonna,
this
it's only
year,
gonna
this year.
continue that way, so.
Once the Jupiter Neptune hits in 2022, I'll probably do one that's more geared toward meditating on the signs and you know, using the Piscean energy that way, rather than the intellectual stuff.
So what would you say Mount Kailash then, if Shasta is the crown?
Oh, what is that?
I wanted
That's
to ask, 'cause,
that's in Tibet, right?
yeah,
I have my version of that geometric map sitting over there. You can run over there and look and see where Tibet is, what section. I think it's either Libra or Scorpio in through there. But
No way. Oh, that makes sense.
But that system, that geodetic system is really phenomenal for weather forecasting. It's quite amazing, you know, and there seems to be major temples, right? On the what is it? The Serpent Mounds in Ohio, they're on the Aries Taurus cusp, you know, and there's ones that go all the way around. There's something that's kind of there's a problem with this system. This system was developed ages ago, okay? And so the poles have shifted some. So we don't really know exactly
Right.
how much they've shifted. They shifted enough so that Ophiuchus is an issue, whether it crosses the ecliptic or not, just a little bit here and there. There used to be 13 signs, now there's 12, this kind of stuff. But so the further you get away from the equator, the harder it is to pinpoint where the demarcation, the cusp is, so. But it works really well for most generic things. So, okay, well, nothing else. Anybody there? That's it. All right, thank you, everybody. Have fun. Oh, and please make some sparks in 2021. Okay, light some fuses, blow some shit up. Okay.
Also, you give permission.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and stay a little further back, yeah, from the exposure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Give yourself time to,
What do you think? No travel January, February?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, especially as you get toward the third week in January, if you're going down the freeway, pay more attention to the person next to you, that their tire doesn't blow out and,
Yeah.
it doesn't come at you straight on. Uranus usually does not,
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.